Can everybody hear me? Can everybody see the screen? Stuart, could you confirm that, please?
Yep, I can see everything.
Perfect.
Looking good.
Perfect. Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to be invited to the PWI Lunch and Learn session today. I'm in our boardroom with Ken Lambert, and we've got a slide deck of about 20 slides that we can go through. As Stuart said, questions to the end if possible, please. If there's any questions that we can't handle at the end, then we will advise after the event via Stuart. But just first of all, introductions. My name's Andy Mehaffey, and I'm the Managing Director for OnWave, responsible for the deployment of OWL in rail. My background is 30 years as a QS, and the last 24 years I've been in the commercial world in the rail environment, both working for large tier 1 contractors and also Network Rail. And I'll just hand over to Ken.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, Ken Lambert. So I'm the Senior Business Development Manager for OnWave. Been on the railways for 38 years. My background is from track. So I joined the railway at Stonebridge Park as a trackman. Worked my way through the ranks, doing various jobs in renewals and maintenance, all around sort of Euston to Crewe area. I was the area planning manager when we did the route, West Coast Route Board upgrade. So that was a good, interesting project of work. I've also been a depot manager and senior program manager, and the last sort of 3 years I was working as Nick Millington's deputy on the safety task force. So improving planning and the use of safety technology. And one of the things around safety was implementing geofencing. And of course, I'm a fellow of the PWI Institute as well. Okay. Next slide. So there's been far too many deaths, as you can see there on the graph, 42 deaths since 2000. Far too many, and you can see there Martin Frobisher, in regards to what he's saying is we will make it safer to work on and near the line every day and make sure everyone goes home safe every day, which is really, really important. One of the things we're seeing at the moment is that from an operational close calls point of view, 30% of all operational close calls are due to a loss of situational awareness. And that's where the geofence solution can come in to help. Time and time again, when I was working in Network Rail and now with OnWave, when we go out and do our site visits, people say this will never happen to me. And yet we're still having lots of operational close calls with people placing protection in the wrong place, as an example. So moving on to the Network Rail Safety Task Force. So you see there, after the fatality of 2 track workers at Margam, Rave Investment got Network Rail launched a £70 million incentive scheme. That turned out to be just over 250 million. So when you think about the spend in Network Rail, we spent over 250 million improving the way we carry out work on the railway, keeping people safer. That led to product approval back in September 2022 for geofencing. We also issued a new standard around geofencing, how you'd actually introduce it and use geofencing. And the standard requires an accuracy less than 300 millimeters. And it's a secondary form of protection. There's a recent RSSB report that states across the board in regards to operational close calls, near misses, etc., using geofencing would have a benefit of around 60% improvement in safety. So it really is an important subject and one that everyone should really understand more about, and how we can introduce geofencing and how it will help everybody in Network Rail. Andy will now run through the following slides for you with a bit more detail around statistics.
So this is some data from the period 5 safety summary report. Just to note that the sum is based on initial reports of the incidents and doesn't include any subsequent investigations that have been done. So these figures are really provided for awareness in terms of the rail community. So just starting looking at these graphs in a bit more detail. So working outside of protection there, that graph shows that over the last 2 years, there's been a worrying trend in terms of period on period incidents occurring. So in terms of workers working outside of protection, 22 to 23, there were 108 incidents. And this far this year, there's been 55. Worksite marker boards, again, 22 to 23, there were 78 incidents, and currently this year there's 49. Isolation irregularities in the years 22 to 23, there were 26, and we're currently looking at 16 so far this year. Points run through is another interesting one, and this is something that we're engaging with Network Rail in producing a workflow that will hopefully mitigate this one. 41 instances in the year 22 to 23, and thus far in 23-24 there's been 18. Now we estimate that the cost of each points run through is circa 75k, and I think that's probably quite a prudent estimate. So if you take 18 so far this year, that's in excess of £3 million that could have been saved, and that's quite pertinent with the efficiency drive that Network Rail and the rest of the industry are going through. And this slide is just as recent as last week. Safety bulletin was issued by Network Rail, and it involved a track worker wandering outside of his work site onto an open line, and extremely lucky, if it had been on that open line 5 seconds later, he would have been hit by a train on the West Coast Main Line. So these instances are just far too regular. So this is the part of the technology slide. So geofencing uses RTK technology, which is real-time kinematics. And what that does is work alongside GNSS, which is GPS, to give you a far greater accuracy of where you are. So typically, GNSS will give you 1 to 3 meters accuracy, and you'll find that on your phone, in your car, and also when you're trying to find your way around using Google Maps. What the RTK technology does is define the position of where you are on the planet, and it does that by applying correction data to the GNSS signal coming from the satellites. Other purposes that it can be used for is surveying, drones, and also driverless vehicles. And what we got from our own data source from 2 weeks ago was that whilst the device was being used on a shift, it managed to achieve on average 6.5 centimetre accuracy, and that was only that low or that high because it needs to see the sky. The devices need to see the sky, and the individuals wearing it were in and out of cabins and under bridges, so it doesn't work under bridges. It has to see the sky. RTK network. So most of the planet is covered by an RTK network, and these are third-party networks that are provided by companies. Here in the UK, everything is backed up by Ordnance Survey, so there are various other companies that feed off of that Ordnance Survey data to provide RTK. So when we are in the UK, we use a service either provided by Trimble or Hexagon or Leica. However, what we've found by working with Network Rail in the southern region, we were asked to install our own RTK base stations. So this is just a map across southern England, where we were asked to install our base stations, and that was due to the commercial benefits that that can give if there are thousands and thousands of users. The RTK third-party providers work on a license basis, so you have to buy a license to use their service for a year. So a little bit of information on this slide. Each of those circles are 25 to 30k radius. The service doesn't disappear after 25 to 30 kilometres. It merely just tails off. They can be used for drones and survey inspections. The base stations themselves are relatively small, and they can be installed on the side of offices or on the side of buildings, generally at low level, so they can be maintained easily. They can run off 12 or 240 volts. And we've also got a solar powered option that is close to being issued into the market, that's currently under testing. I've said that the devices need to see the sky. We've also developed an ultra wideband option so that the devices can work in tunnels and under bridges, and that's due to come out Q1 next year. So it's just a quick slide on how it works and how the process works for geofencing. It requires satellite and RTK base station coverage. It also needs cellular coverage. So in terms of how the platform works, we use information that we can get from Network Rail. So this is their high resolution data, their track centerline information, and also track diagrams where we can get hold of them. Typically, the zones are created on the OWL portal, although we have created a zone automation tool. So if you use Google Earth, you can create zones using a polygon. So you can define safe and unsafe zones on the portal, which I'll come to in a minute. The wearable devices will be allocated to that project on the portal, so they will know where the zones are and where they are in relation to those zones. And should the wearer deviate from the safe zone or the safe geofence zone, the device will alert the wearer that he's somewhere where he shouldn't. The portal can also give you monitoring and reporting data that can be used for any leading indicator information that you require. We've also got an app that can be used alongside the portal and the device, and that will give you the situational awareness piece. So the app, if you download it on your phone, you can Bluetooth link it to the wearable device. So that one on the right hand side there is our Plus device, and the phone will then inherit the RTK accuracy of that device. Now, the view that you then get on the app will be the same as the view that you get on the portal when you create the zones. However, what it will do is give you the situational awareness of where you are in relation to those zones. So it will let you know if you are in a safe zone or if you're approaching an unsafe zone. These are the devices that we currently have available. So the Zero and the Pro, those currently only have GNSS accuracy. The Plus on the right hand side is the clever device out of all three. So that's the one that has the RTK enabled technology within it, and it's meant for wearing by humans. The Pro and the Zero, lots of user cases for these, insofar as customers using them to just locate their equipment. So their equipment could be marker boards, their equipment could be RRVs or trolleys. We are developing a Plus device that does have RTK accuracy. as the feedback from customers is that they would prefer to know exactly where their items of equipment are, as opposed to have the 1 to 3 meter accuracy that you can get with the GNSS enabled devices. So this is a typical view of what the portal looks like. What you can see there is the zones that have been created, and the icons of the orange icons there detailing the position of people on the portal. So what the portal allows you to do is have a live view of what is going on in any possession or in any work site, as long as people have enabled their device within that project. What the portal can also do is replay instances that you may want to look at again. So if there's an incident or an accident that's happened on site, you can then replay the information back to see where individuals were at any given time within the work site, where an item of plant was in the work site at any given time as well. And that proves to be quite important in the case of incidents. So just moving on to the benefits that we've got in the rail environment. First one, and the most important one, as Ken was alluding to, is it enhances the situational awareness of the individual wearing the device. That gives them a view of where they are in relation to any safe zones and unsafe zones. User cases there is access point identification. Customers who have long possessions and multiple access points, the devices can advise the wearer that they're at the correct access point, so that they will be entering the railway on the right side, as opposed to entering into any unsafe zones. People and plant interface, again, it's a very important factor on the railway. So all of our devices can be put on an item of plant, such as an RRV. And what you can do is create a dynamic zone, so a circular zone around that item of plant or equipment, and you can instruct the devices to behave in an appropriate manner when they get to that zone. So, for instance, on an RRV, you could create a zone around it of, say, a 10-meter radius, and you could ensure that everybody on the railway during that work site gets a warning, whether it's a visible warning, an audible warning, or a vibration when they enter into that zone. So they're somewhere where they shouldn't be. We can also use the portal to use an approaching rule. So rather than the device alert you when you're in an unsafe area, it can actually alert you when you're approaching an unsafe area, which again is useful when working on the railway. Objects left on the line. So what we've seen through the data of period 5 are marker boards getting hit. Unfortunately, we've seen trolleys being hit on the line as well, which again is dangerous for anybody else on site. What we can do is you can use the devices, allocate them to a marker board or a trolley, and at the end of the possession, you would essentially turn off the zones. But what the platform will do is will alert you that there is still a device in that zone. So it will prompt the supervisor to go out on site and check whether he has got everything off of site. So that it will stop a trolley being left on site. It will prompt them to look for a marker board that, again, they've left on site. Other activities that could benefit from geofencing is you can create boundaries around work sites, such as welding. So you can create a zone whereby there's a 20-30 meter distance from the team undertaking the welding. And you can also use it to alert people that they're heading into zones where there could be hazards such as asbestos, Japanese knotweed, anything that's harmful. Also, in terms of biodiversity, you can create zones around areas such as badgers, so to keep people and plant away from those instances as well. So it's got many applications, both inside and outside the rail industry. What you can also do, and maybe it's not so pertinent in the railway corridor, is you can import buried services information. You can import areas of archaeology. Basically, the system is flexible enough that you can import any XY data into it, and it will use that information to create zones, and then it's down to the user to determine what rules they want to place around those zones, whether it's an alert to warn that you're leaving a zone, or an alert to warn whether you're entering the zone. These are some of our current customers. Network Rail, we're currently deploying over 800 devices to their maintenance organisation in Kent, Sussex and Wessex. That involves the creation of over 1,500 zones so far, and we are extracting some very good data from those zones, and the platform that will help us at Network Rail analyse what people's behaviours are. Morgan Sindall currently deployed devices with them in North Wales. Alstom have been using the devices for nearly a year, and they've been using them as business as usual in their framework in Anglia. Amy, we used them with Amy for bridge inspections in Kent, and Fog Fitzpatrick are using them for markboard placement and removal during possessions. Dyer and Butler are also using them for a similar activity on their framework in Southern as well. Balfour Beatty National Highway, so we're involved with the Lower Thames Crossing as well in terms of zones and devices. So it can be used both inside and outside the railway industry. Just a user case with Alstom. These are their challenges that they've had, and Saif Sharif of OnWave and Lewis Johnson from Alstom have been working very, very closely in deploying the devices with Alstom on their Anglia framework, and Alstom have embraced the technology, and they're responsible for creation of their own zones and management of the devices and the rules that go around those as well. Obviously, in Anglia, there's an awful lot of level crossings that exist, and these are high-risk areas that Alstom have recognised and wanted to use the devices in earnest on. So they have long possessions most weekends, and what it really does is give full visibility to the supervisors in Alstom as to where items of plant are and where their people are. Last slide, GDPR and privacy. We are Cyber Essentials Plus, and we are it's been consulted nationally by the unions within Network Rail, who are very positive around the geofencing technology, and they are very much a promoter. And these are just some of the items there on the bullet points. So we only monitor people within the railway boundary. As soon as they cross the railway boundary, the data is dropped. We can also use it to only monitor during working hours. So you just can use the portal to set a start and an end time, if you like, on days. And all the data is anonymised. So everything is stored in the cloud, but is securely stored in the cloud, and is there for the eyes only of Network Rail should they request it in the event of an incident. That is all of my slides. So I'll hand back to Stuart and see if there's any questions that have arisen during the presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Andy and Ken, for giving us the insight here. Something that is clearly gaining momentum in terms of a safety system. There's no questions on the chat board as yet. So if anybody wants to raise any, if you could just put them in there now, and then I'll pick them up. Just while that's happening, in terms of the uptake for this, and clearly it's gathering pace, gathering momentum. I just wonder what sort of data we might have now to demonstrate the benefits that it's bringing in terms of curtailment of incidents, accidents, near misses, etc. Is there anything starting to grow in terms of demonstrable data we've got?
Yes, you are right insofar as it's relatively new in its introduction. So I think we started to roll out with Network Rail Southern in round about June time, and we are now getting hold of that data and presenting back to Brad Smith, who's our sponsor in Network Rail. So he's keen to see that data, and what I believe it will show is that over time per device, the number of alerts associated with entering an unsafe zone, I think we'll see a drop over time. So the devices are working, they're making the individuals aware of where they are in terms of a safe and unsafe place to be on the railway. So yes, there's a lot of data. I mean, the devices report twice a second location. So you can imagine how many bits of data we've got. We've got millions and millions of data entries that we need to wade through and filter through to get the most useful out of it that will help in any leading indicators.
I think as well, what we have seen is where we've introduced devices, we've actually not seen any incidents involving staff being in the wrong location or placing a marker board or stop board in the wrong location either. And that's something, as Andy said there, as we start to pull the data together, we'll be able to start seeing that as well.
So that's very positive, isn't it? Which is great. Interesting, just sort of in relation to that, Michelle Nolan McSweeney asks, is there a reason that we've only gone as far as Southern at this point in time, given the potential benefits of this?
That's a good question, and I think the best people to ask would be Network Rail. Network Rail obviously work in their regions, and the regions are working by themselves in terms of trying to do the right thing. So certainly Southern grabbed it and ran with it first, and I believe that Wales and Western will be following on very shortly in terms of a pilot, probably till the end of CP6. Whether there will be any central strategy over the next year or so, I guess that's in the hands of Network Rail. Us personally would welcome a central strategy whereby the regions can go and procure, go and test the devices as they see fit, and choose the best ones that suits their user case. So no, I couldn't give you a reason why none of the others regions are as quick as Southern, but we are talking to Eastern in some great depth. We did a trial with Network Rail Scotland a couple of months ago up at Shettleston Depot in Glasgow. So there is a momentum there. There is a requirement that people are seeing the benefits of. As soon as teams and section managers see the devices and feel the devices, they can automatically see what benefit there is. So yes, the momentum has started, but it's got a way to go yet, and hopefully in CP7 we'll see an increase in the pickup.
It feels like a lot of the heads of safety within the routes are sort of having their safety days, where we're inviting the likes of ourselves to come along and show their teams what it can do. And I think then they're going away to actually look at where's their highest risk and how can they actually introduce it and get the feedback from the ground troops as well to actually get them to buy into it, to see it actually is a good thing that can. I mean, the way I always look at it, it's that sort of, it's a friend. So it's that tap on the shoulder. If you actually do lose yourself in situational awareness, that device will kick in and act as a friend for you, to tap on the shoulder to make sure you come back out of that danger zone. And I guess, in my years of experience, it happened to me once, probably about 20 odd years ago, where I was doing an inspection on the track when we were allowed to use flags and horns, etc. And we'd stood clear for a train, and I went to step out, and my colleague grabbed my shoulder and pulled me back as an express train went flying past. So, geofencing can be seen like that. It is your friend that supports you and gives you that tap on the shoulder to say, "Come on, you need to step back." So,
Well, thank you for that. So Adrian asks, are there plans to link to other systems like Rail Hub or trackside inspection apps?
go on.
Yes, so the platform has the ability to link into and talk to most other systems. So yes, we are talking to Rail Hub plus other apps, as you mentioned there. So yes, I think the last thing that everybody wants is to have 18 different portals on their laptop. So yes, it's certainly something that we've recognised, is that from the user perspective, people just want everything in as fewer places as possible. So yes, absolutely, and it makes perfect sense.
So potential integration to follow then.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Got a question. Will it provide vertical altitude?
It's something that's on our long list of developments. It's a really difficult one because it obviously uses satellites, and satellites are above us. So it's something that we're looking at bringing in, but it's not at the top of our list at the moment. But it's, watch this space, I would say, for over the next 8 to 12 months.
Okay, thank you. Billy's put a comment in here rather than a question, basically saying Central Route have had a demonstration and are looking to trial the devices for Birmingham New Street. So I'm not sure whether you're aware of that or whether that's just good news coming your way.
Well, if the comment was have had or has had a demonstration, then unfortunately it wasn't us. But I think that just links back, Stuart, to the strategy that Network Rail have so far in terms of just letting the regions do what they see as the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So in the case of Central, they've had a demonstration from another, which is fine. That's what they've chosen to do.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, go on. Sorry, I thought one of you said something. My apologies. So we've got a question that talks about blind spots from Stephen. Is the receiver affected by topographical blind spots, for example, deep rock cuttings?
The answer is no. As long as the device can see the sky, and there's cellular coverage and RTK coverage, you can get the accuracy. There's the devices have got technology in them that pick up any of the 4 major cellular providers. So as long as there is one, and that picks up 2G right the way through to 5G, then the system will work in terms of communicating with the RTK base stations. But no, it doesn't get affected by that. It doesn't work well under canopies where it can't see the sky, and it won't work in tunnels either. But we are looking at an ultra wideband option that will be ready Q1 next year. So that's going to be tested. What that enables you to do is essentially see where devices are under cover of a tunnel, under a bridge, under canopies in stations, for example.
And I guess one thing we probably didn't mention was that OnWave are actually a connectivity company. So we're like, as I describe it, we're like a mini BT. So if there is issues around the country with particular network coverage, then we can come in and actually do a survey and boost that area up as well.
Okay, thank you. Les has asked, will this system tie up with Sentinel data for access onto the railway network and management of time spent on site and rest periods between shift, with a current rest time of 12-hour door-to-door, and fatigue management?
So at the moment, the platform will record individuals going onto site who turn on the device and turn off the device. So it will capture hours when the device is switched on. Now in Network Rail, everything is anonymous, as that's what the standard asks for. Can it provide that data? Yes. Could it use the data such as Sentinel numbers in the portal? Yes, it could, but that's not its primary function. I think there's other sort of site access control software that's available that Network Rail are currently running with that maybe do that better. But what we can do is interface with that data and either surface it on our platform or vice versa. So the two do go hand in hand, and it's a very apt user case to pick up on, bearing in mind the rules around working.
But just as a bit of a side to it, I think you may have answered the question, but it did occur to me whether there were any data protection implications with all the information which you're gleaning on people's whereabouts, etc. And all this is for the right safety reasons, but I wonder if there were any implications.
Well, it was covered on the last slide, Stuart. Everything is recorded on the cloud, and it's kept securely in accordance with the standard and GDPR rules, and it's there locked away.
It's one of the questions under the product approval as well. So there's a whole host of questions that need to be answered under product approval in regards to cybersecurity. And then from a trade union point of view, they wanted to understand how Network Rail were going to use the data as well. So as Andy explained earlier, it was just to actually use the data if there was a safety incident. So therefore, when you're setting up geofencing and the authorization, that only certain people have access to behind the data to put it back out again. So at the moment, that's lies with us in OnWave. But as things develop over time, I'm sure that will change, and people within Network Rail will, senior people in Network Rail will have access to that.
Great, thank you. James has asked, do you have the resources to develop the RTK base stations across the country as of now, or is this really just a longer term aspiration?
No, we can provide our own RTK base stations now. Generally, we just need to agree a location. So one of the challenges we had in the southern region was finding the correct location to put the base stations. But no, we could run now if there was a requirement for us to do so.
Right, great, thank you. Daniel's asked what appears to be quite a pertinent question, really. He comments the fact that it's a great presentation, which is so great, so thank you very much. It's about the assurance process for drawing and defining safe geozones. Effectively, how can the track workers trust that the geozones have been set correctly?
Yeah, very good question. So within this is catered for in the standard. So the standard calls for a Form G process. Now, I understand that the Form G may mean something else to other people on this call, but that's what the process is called. So what that process calls for in terms of, let's say, Network Rail in Southern is we are given the data that give the details of the possession or the work site, and we then create that on the portal, and that then gets checked back by the relevant person in Network Rail. So ultimately, we just produce what is asked for, and then that is then ratified, double checked back by Network Rail. So we can use centerline data that Network Rail have given us. We can also use the high res images that, again, that Network Rail have given us. But as part of the process, when we're out on site, we always create a test zone adjacent to the railway, where the zone's created generally off of the railway, and then each device is tested for its accuracy in that test zone before anybody goes out on site. So that's the assurance process of Form G, and then there's the practical application of that on site, because the technology is new, and people just need to be used to it and have confidence in it. And the feedback that we've had is that the Form G process with the zone setup works well, and also the testing off of the railway network when they're getting ready to start their shift also gives them that confidence. Ken, have I missed anything out on Form G?
No, that's exactly right. We've also used the way marker data as well. That apparently it's been recently recalibrated by Network Rail. That, to put into English, is basically the chains, yards, mileposts. Now, we know that mileposts aren't always accurate. However, the data that Network Rail have got has actually aligned it on a database rather than physically on track. And we'll be using that data as well to get the accuracy in regards to miles, chains, yards, whatever you want to use, kilometres. We currently use lat long, so that will give you a far better level of accuracy. And we are, as we're going through Southern, we're starting to do asset tagging of things like signals. So again, we know that the signal is going to be there, and we're also getting the lat long location. So that's one of the other sort of offshoots of benefits with the devices that we use. You can actually use them rather than using your mobile phone to actually locate your assets and have the accuracy, rather than between sort of 1 and 27 meters. You can get your 10mm accuracy. So fantastic for signals, points, etc.
Right, thank you. Is that great to outline a rigorous assurance process for?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So that's great. Thank you. The last question I've got here is from Rajesh, and he asks, can this replace the current security measures that NR are currently proposing, or is it only used as a secondary measuring sort of device?
The standard that was issued that we're part of is purely secondary means protection. So
right.
It does not replace the site warden.
Yeah, this has never been about replacing people. So in the standard and in the discussions we had with trade unions, there always needs to be that site warden on site. So it's a secondary.
Thank you. So I hope, Rajesh, that answers your question. Actually, I've got another question. Hold on. France goes on to say, this is technology for warning the track workers of dangers, which is excellent. Might there be a need to expand this to trains, enabling the drivers to see the portal and warn them where there will be workers close to the line that they travel on? Another interesting question.
Good answer.
Yeah.
So Andrew Simmons in Technical Authority for Network Rail is looking at exactly that. I'm not too sure exactly where he's going with it now. I think there was some bit of pause with the funding, but he was looking to trial. And simply put, if you had a device on a train, had a device on a track worker, you could warn the track worker from the train. So it is something that the Technical Authority are looking at. It is possible, depending on line speed. So I think at the moment with the technology, if you've got a train that's traveling, say, 160 miles an hour, then you might start to lose a bit of the accuracy. But obviously, we don't have that in the UK. So, but it is something that Andrew Simmons is looking at, and great question. So I think that, that is definitely a way forward, or potential way forward with using geofencing in the future.
Yeah, clearly there are many aspects of this that you've not been able to fully explore, and no doubt you will in the future, because there's a hell of a lot of potential, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely right, Stuart. The applications, we get great feedback from the customers. Can it do this? Can it do that? And generally it can. It's just a case of where it sits in the development line that 15 developers are looking to do to continually improve the device.
Right, well, thank you. I've got no more questions. There's been a number of people that have posted a thank you very much, very interesting, informative presentation. So thank you very much for being part of our Lunch and Learn autumn events. So Ken, on behalf of the PWI and Andy, please accept my thanks for being on here. What we will do, obviously this is recorded, so people can watch this offline. And there'll also be a LinkedIn link, so that if anybody wants to continue the conversation, ask you any questions, you can carry on that conversation, which is great for people that have not been able to be here today, and possibly good for those that have been here but think of a question a bit later. So is there anything else you'd like to finish with, Andy, Ken?
Well, thank you for having us. The technology is still new. Word is getting out there. I would say the word could get out there quicker. What we do find is that whilst there's lots of literature on our product, the benefit that you really get out of it is a demonstration that we have been doing lots around the country. So thank everybody on the call for their interest and their questions, and hopefully see you at a demo soon.
That's great. Thank you very